Good evening, and welcome to this month's episode of the Prince Hall Think Tank, a monthly online conversation amongst Prince Hall Freemasons about topics relative to the craft. My name is Antonio Caffey, and I'm a very proud member of St. Mark's Lodge number 7, located in Columbus, Ohio, where Brother Shaman Stone serves as Worshipful Master. We were chartered in 1852 by the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Ohio, where presently the Honorable Kelvin J. Davis serves as Most Worshipful Grand Master. Before I let the other brother introduce himself, a quick note: the views and opinions expressed on the show in no way, shape, form, or fashion reflect the views expressed on, reflect the views and opinions of the respective lodges and Grand Lodges in which we hold membership in. Before we begin, as you can tell, some of you that watch the show regularly, I'm back. And I just wanted to personally thank Brothers Collins, Gillarm, Brother Morgan, Brother Preston Collins as well, and Brother Curtis, and the many, many guests that appeared on the show during my absence. From what I've seen both on the show and reading some of the reactions that that the show elicited from the viewers, I'm deeply indebted to you brothers for keeping the dream alive and keeping this thing not only going but just reaching new heights. So gratitude definitely goes out to you brothers.
Hey, team effort. It's a team effort, Brother Caffey. And by team I mean mostly me, but those other guys were here as well, and so we appreciate that. We appreciate you as always, and we're happy that you're back, sir. We're very happy you're back. Speaking of we, who am I and why am I talking to you? My name is James R. Morgan III, and I am a past master of Corinthian Lodge number 18 in the nation's capital of Washington, D.C. Associate Grand Historian and Archivist for the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of D.C., where the Honorable Philip David is currently presiding as our Most Worshipful Grand Master. And once again, it is an honor to be here tonight on the Prince Hall Think Tank. We want to thank you all again for your support, and most especially, we want to thank Creator, the Godfather, as they say, Brother Antonio Caffey, and we are so glad to have you back. I just found it so ironic that we got OJ out, and then we got you, and so we're waiting on Suge Knight,
You're right.
And then we're gonna have a real party.
Right.
We'll leave that where that is.
Right, the three of us are loose again. Huh?
Yes, indeed.
The other brothers that are usually on the show, they're doing some things. I believe Brother Collins will be or should be on with us shortly. He's trying to get situated. But other than that, the topic of this show is a little different, something that we wanted to do differently. We usually have a single topic that we'll have a discussion about, an in-depth discussion about, but we wanted to, there's been a lot of different things going on over the past few months that we wanted to discuss as a group and get your opinions on and different things like that. So, without further ado, we'll just jump right into it. As many of you know, I believe a couple weeks ago, history was made in the great state of Alabama. I always view Alabama as my second home. My mother and father are from Lowndes County, Alabama. So I remember Alabama fondly going down there during the summer and going down there during the winter time as well. But history was made when the Grand Lodge of Alabama and the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Alabama entered into a mutual, and I always stress the word mutual, recognition agreement. And again, it was a historical day for American Freemasonry. Many of you know that it's been a struggle, for the most part when it comes to the two regular bodies of Freemasonry that exist in this country when it comes to mutual recognition. So, with Alabama taking that giant step to do that, hopefully it's a good sign of things to come. Brother
Oh, I
Morgan.
definitely, I definitely agree with you on that. Like you, our viewers probably remember, I have some very deep Alabama roots myself. My mother's entire was Alabama based, basically, and so I was very pleased to see that. And even more so, I'm pleased because one thing I want people to understand, Hank, if you don't understand anything else, is that we are active brothers in our lodges and our grand lodges and whatnot. On here at the moment, we definitely want to congratulate Brother Ken Collins, one of our members here on the show, because I know he was an active participant in moving that along. I actually had not spoken to him until today on the phone, but I told him, congratulations, job well done for getting that done, because that's something that has obviously been a defining issue, like history, and even down to today. As a matter of fact, I think that's probably one of the most unique things about American Freemasonry is the racial segregation that had occurred that birthed first place. So to see that happen, and to see it happen down in the heart of Dixie, as it's called, I think is good. I think it's a long time coming. It's a sign of things to come, not just in Alabama, but elsewhere throughout the country. Like Ohio and DC, where we've been enjoying those type of relationships for a while. I think we've seen the real benefits, both on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
In the Deep South, where there's so much history of race relations, I think it's really remarkable.
Yeah, and I think as it's as it progresses further, we need to be careful when we're having conversations around mutual recognition as well. When it occurred, and there were some folks on both sides, people that definitely agreed with it and saw the benefits of it, and you had a few folks that still were a little hesitant. And I always look at those conversations, and when I'm trying to have conversations around the subject of mutual recognition, I always at the same time where I'm hopefully trying to dispel some of the myths and some of the rumors around it, I still need to be sensitive to folks when it comes to how they feel about that, because as you pointed out with the history or the historical component outside of Freemasonry that impacted mutual recognition within Freemasonry, those feelings are real. And those feelings aren't just, while they may be old, they're generational. Right. So, we need to be cognizant of that as we move forward. So, I would be real interested to see how that, some things I guess aren't meant to be discussed, but I would, guess and hope that those feelings had to be taken into consideration, and that's why sometimes you don't see things happening overnight. Nothing ever happens overnight.
Right. And I think it's very important what you just said, because a lot of us, especially those of us who are younger and whatnot. I mean, I'm 28. We grew up in a different world than some of the old senior statesmen in Masonry and whatnot, and so I do think that there has to be an understanding on both sides. I think that for the older generation, I've said this time and again, both Black and white Freemasons in America have gone for years through their Masonic careers never having to interact, and then this idea of trying to interact or recognize, or however you want to define it. I don't think it's all the way right, but I don't think that it's all the way wrong either. And it's one of those things. And I was telling Brother Collins earlier today, I said, he was telling me about some of the stuff regarding the Grand Lodge of Alabama and Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Alabama's. And I said, some of that sounds really crazy, except for the fact that this is America. At the heart of it, it's America. It's not so much Freemasonry, it's America.
Right.
And like I said, I just think we can just move forward and have open and honest conversation and dialogue, which I think is the hard part, really, and try to move forward, because at the end of the day, we are still one organization, even though we don't think of ourselves as that. Particularly in Prince Hall, we think, oh, we're Prince Hall. Yeah, no, we are, but there's one group of Masons, and Prince Hall Masonry is just a branch on that tree.
Yeah, yeah, and like you said, I mean, I really hope that it can just open up the proverbial floodgates for those for those other states. And it's one of those things where even if you know, for whatever reason, whatever your reason may be, that that you may, or you may choose not to, you know, partake in visiting another lodge in another jurisdiction, you know, but your feeling or that shouldn't take away. There may be another brother or a group of brothers within your jurisdiction that may enjoy visiting, you know, other lodges. And just because they want to visit, that doesn't necessarily, or that doesn't mean at all that, you know, that they're looking down or they're looking for something else. They just want to use, or they want to be able to enjoy one of the true benefits of being in the craft, which is to travel into other lodges.
Right. Absolutely.
In other jurisdictions.
Share something I never really shared before openly about my own Masonic journey, which has been interesting. Most of y'all, again, one thing people know about me is I'm very big into genealogy and family history. I actually found a relative of mine who's white. I know under this chocolate exterior, y'all can't see it, but I have some European ancestry, apparently about 20% of me actually. But I found a relative of mine who he was, you know, he's a Caucasian man, not too much older than me. And as we got to talking, find out, because he's actually from my home state of New Jersey, that he was a member of the Grand Lodge of New Jersey. And he works on their Masonic magazine, and you know, he's real into like Masonic history and whatnot, like me. And I said, whoa, like that was something we had in common, and we're related. But if it wasn't for mutual recognition, which I don't think my Grand Lodge doesn't recognize his at the time, but the point is that we can try to make that happen, so that, you know, we're relatives. I mean, why shouldn't we be able to sit in a lodge together or do? You see what I'm saying? Regardless of the history of race in this country, I think that we're supposed to try to rise above that. But at the same time, I don't think that it's one of those things where we have to, where we need to sweep it under the rug either, especially in the South. And that's one of the reasons why I think that the whole thing about the Grand Lodges in Alabama is so important. Forward, one thing that I would, you know, respectfully advise, because I'm not a member of either one of those Grand Lodges, but one thing I would respectfully advise is I think that as time goes on in the South, not just in Alabama, but period, that there need to probably be some really open conversations with some of the local lodges or districts, what have you, because, you know, the history is not pretty. It's just, I mean, if you familiarize yourself with Southern Prince Hall Grand Lodge proceedings, you'll find some very, very about their treatment and whatnot that was part and parcel of the culture of America at the time. So I think that we have to be open-minded on both sides. We have to be honest, and I think that can be one of the hardest parts. Like I said earlier.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely can't be. I mean, even getting, I would imagine, even getting to the point of establishing mutual recognition, can't go about it, in my opinion, the same way you would go about, say, if we were trying to establish mutual recognition with a foreign jurisdiction, you know, because the history, you know, the mechanics around it in regards to the Junior Grand Lodge, you know, sending a formal request to the Senior Grand Lodge, yeah, that part, but the conversations that happen even before that takes place, you know, when we're dealing with, because, you know, I think sometimes within Freemasonry, we like to make the claim that, you know, well, you know, okay, this is what we're practicing in Freemasonry, and even though America may be going through this, you know, but this is Freemasonry, but it those type of things within the history of America, it transcended everything, and it had a severe impact on everything, and moving forward with other jurisdictions that I think that would want to explore those mutual recognition agreement within that geographical area of the country, you know, I think they would do a good service to themselves in regards to contacting folks in Alabama and finding out, like, how did you overcome that?
Right. And I think that goes on both sides as well. You know, again, I think having that honest discussion and dialogue is so important. Here's my big question to brothers and sisters, because we can't forget them. Is for those who are against or have troubles with the idea, is what are you afraid of? You know, at the end of the day, I mean, the big question that comes in, hey, there he is, the man of the hour. Ladies and gentlemen, Ken Collins, ladies and gentlemen, Ken Collins.
Hey, guys. How you doing?
How you doing, good brother?
We were just up here talking about, and I don't know if you saw or not, but we were talking about the situation in Alabama and whatnot. And again, congratulations to you guys.
I appreciate you. You want me to go ahead and jump right in?
Oh yeah, go ahead. We basically talked about what happened, but you know, go right ahead.
All right, perfect. Well, first and foremost, Brother Caffey, it's great to have you back and see you back on. Brother James, as well as with Brother Dave, and we hate that we missed them, but you know, using our 24-inch gauges, sometimes we're behind the 8 balls, and what essentially happened. And you know, I'm literally on the road. Just got done dropping my daughter off in Augusta, and I ran up the highway, and I literally just shot a note to James. I'm checking in my hotel. I'm getting in as soon as possible. But I wanted to basically give us a quick summation of what we did. We were able to accomplish here in Alabama. A lot of people thought that we wouldn't be able to do it. A lot of times we have a lot of people talking about what they think versus the true aspect of what they know. A lot of people did not know that we've been working together with the Grand Lodge of Alabama. In the process that we took was a real frank conversation of what we need, what we desired, and what they were looking at and what they desired. For the past 2.5 years, we've been working with the Grand Lodge of Alabama behind the scenes, which a lot of people throughout the Masonic world don't know. We've been working on a piece of legislation here in the state, and we've been working hard together. And the team that we've been right there in solidarity. Again, the conversations that are had versus what people whisper and rumble about, they didn't take place. But what we were able to do was to come to a baseline of saying that our 2 Grand Lodges essentially have shared our jurisdiction for over nearly 140 years. And that both of our Grand Lodges are regular Grand Lodges. And the right thing to do is for us to extend not only amity, but also recognition to one another. Whereas the old adage of the younger Grand Lodge coming to the older, we were able to get to a process where we said, we're 2 regular Grand Lodges. We need to recognize each other. We are Alabama. We represent the best about Freemasonry in Alabama, and this is what we're going to do. And on November 14th, we got a note from the Grand Lodge. A couple of the people, they informed us that it was a positive vote, and ever since then, I think the Masonic world's been shaken up a little bit, because we were one of the few states that people thought it would never occur on. But lo and behold, the Grand Architect used his compass and we were steered in the right direction.
Hey, hats off. I'm not wearing a hat, but if I was, I would take it off to you.
I appreciate that.
There, so I'll fez my fez off to you.
And we definitely have to say, it goes without saying that Grandmaster Corey Hawkins, as well as Grandmaster Bobby, excuse me, Bobby Pitts were instrumental in making sure that the baseline of this happened. Not only that, past Grandmaster Lane Weatherby was directly involved, and he's been a godsend, as well as the Grand Secretary, past Grandmaster Teddy Rogan, in this process. And it goes without saying that when you put your differences aside and we come together, what we call on the level, and we were honest on both sides. And I say that honesty bordered upon offending somebody that didn't live in the state of Alabama or weren't familiar with how things occur in Alabama. We had really frank discussions about what our expectations were, what our hesitations were, and where we would like to see this thing go. But again, we can't say that we're happy enough that we were able to get this goose egg off.
So Ken, we were, because James and I were talking about, like, if a jurisdiction that doesn't have mutual recognition right now, but they're in-state Grand Lodge or regular Grand Lodge or other regular Grand Lodge, what advice would you give them or offer them from your experience with going through that process with the Grand Lodge of Alabama?
Everything occurs initially with the informal talks. The informal talks are the things that gets the ball rolling. It kind of gets you through the cannon fodder of what you would see at the Grand Lodge level, through the committee levels, through all of the bureaucratic red tape. When individuals are able to talk to each other outside of the norm, I think that's where you start to see a little bit of headway start to take place. That way you can kind of gauge where they are. Because our conversation started with, do you think, excuse me, do you think that recognition would happen there? You think we could ever get it? That's how the conversations began, just informal. And then the next question starts to go down of, what do you think recognition would look like? And what are your fears? When you start breaking those conversations down to the lowest common denominators, that sets your baseline. Because the initial process that, say, DC had is not the process that Alabama would have.
Right.
Or what Ohio would have is not what, say, Georgia or Florida would have. Right. Because it's a different dynamic. A lot of people talked about, even with the positive move that we've seen with recognition, we have recognition without visitation. And that's a mutual need and desire that we wanted. Did we want more? Absolutely, maybe recognition at the Grand Lodge level, but that's where you have to start in piecemeal. Because in certain jurisdictions, and I say this, anything above the Mason-Dixon line, you can go for the stars. But I say when you're down in the Deep South area, once you have that initial conversation, the gentlemen get to know each other, and again, there are hesitations from both sides. So people might say, well, the Grand Lodge of Alabama did this. No, the Grand Lodge of Alabama and the Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Alabama, we met each other as equals, and we were honest in saying what our hesitations were. But throughout the South, say Florida, say Georgia, say Tennessee, I'll leave it there. In those states, we know what our hesitations may be, and we know what it might look like. We know what it looked like in Oklahoma. We also know what it looked like in Texas. Texas is not Alabama, but at the same time, some of the cultural, and I use that loosely, some of the cultural makeup is similar to the cultural makeup in the other 8 states. So that's where we have to look at it in throughout that lens. And that's what I'd recommend to those other Grand Lodges, is it takes place at a personal level, not necessarily through the bureaucratic level. That's how things, I believe, If we only use those means, it'll take forever. But then when you can use more of a person-to-person conversation, even if it's informally,
Right.
where it may be a group session, but it's informally, and you have that honest conversation of, let's start off with this, and
Okay.
then you have this large piece of pie, and then once you start to get some of the feedback through the bureaucracy, the pie is a little bit smaller, but the beauty of the entire process is now we have a piece of pie.
Mm-hmm.
And that piece of pie can get bigger and bigger when we come back to the table to try to eat it again.
Right. Well, I want to chime in because we're getting some questions in from the chat room here. One question we have: will it, and by it they're referring to, will it help Prince Hall financially? And that's from Adam 161.
For the Prince Hall Grand Lodge, no, it's not helping us financially. As far as recognition, that's nothing more than a fraternal nicety for two jurisdictions recognizing each other. There's
Right.
no benefit, absolutely none. The only financial benefit we would possibly have is if we were able to get our legislation passed in the frame of support and tax breaks for our nonprofit entity for the Grand Lodge. But financial benefit, there's absolutely no financial benefit, and anybody that says that it's a farce, because one of the major or key pieces to the recognition proposal that we had is that this recognition does not constitute a current nor future what's the word for it, merger, consolidation, or amalgamation of the two entities. The two entities are separate entities, will remain separate entities. Unfortunately, the phrase separate but equal comes into play. Separate but equal, but remember when separate excuse me, the separate but equal came into play, it took some years for us to get rid of it. So the last vestige of segregation in terms of the state of Alabama were broken with this agreement. So we were able to get it done. But now in the future, we can chip away some of those things that that we see unpleasant. But to answer the question, there's absolutely no financial support from either side other than more of the fraternal niceties for two jurisdictions sharing a common area.
Good stuff.
There's a question that I see that I want to, if possible, address, because I see it often, and I think it really fits, what Brother Ken was saying. So the question is, there's a reason why PHA became established. Why would it matter now to have mutual recognition?
I think I've heard this time and again, and I think the main thing is this: is first of all, let's get something clear, and I'm going to combine this with another question I saw from who it was, Brother Greg Harrington, who asked about who has more members in the South, PHA or mainstream as they're called. One thing that I want to say, and I'm happy that we have a platform where we can say this to internet land so people can see it for years to come. Prince Hall is, in my opinion, we are not aware of just how small we really are as an organization, because we're kind of off in our own corner, and we're primarily made up of African Americans, and we're kind of in our communities, and that's cool. But when you talk about Freemasonry or organization, take black and white off of it. You got Masons in Asia. You got Masons in Africa. Matter of fact, I just got back exactly almost 7 days ago from Africa. Okay, you got Masons and Eastern Stars, for that matter, all over the world, who are not PHA, and some of whom are black. Not that it matters, but just to say it. When people say, well, what's the benefit or why now or whatever, I say that we are just as entitled to whether it's travel or whatever else that any of those other people are, and they in turn to me should come and be able to fellowship with us and our lodges and our events and things of that nature. I also think that it's very clear, and I hope anybody who watches this show, y'all who we're most thankful for, who've been with us from day one, one thing I hope that you've learned by now, Masonry affiliation has a story to tell the Masonic world and the world in general, I think. And if we don't tell that story, or if we're not there to tell our story, then who's going to tell it for us? People who've never met a Prince Hall Mason or Eastern Star or anything like that, and would have no idea about who we are unless we're writing, unless we have our own YouTube shows and things. So when I hear that question, it strikes a nerve with me. I think that we need to continue to be in this little bubble. Yes, we are proud of our legacy and who we are, and I'm fine with that. But I don't think we need to be off in this little bubble just looking at each other all day. I think we have a story to tell, and we also have things that we can learn as well from outside of our own walls.
And brother Antonio, I think you hit something on the head. What's the use? It's the idea of being Masonically hamstrung. This concept of exclusive territorial jurisdiction is something I think that needs to be revisited, per se, because something I talked to James about earlier in the day regarding what recognition looks like and how it's applied. The old adage is the younger Grand Lodge requests recognition from the older Grand Lodge.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's the case, and I always repeat this, if that is the case and that is true, did the Grand Lodge of Alaska seek recognition from the Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Alaska, because the Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Alaska is the elder Grand Lodge? Not only that, did the Conference of Grand Masters of North America, did they require the Grand Lodge of Alaska to first be recognized by the Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Alaska, since it's the senior Grand Lodge in that area? So as we talk about things like this, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. So if you're going to set this up this way, it needs to be placed across the board with everyone. Don't come up with caveats that says, well, they were under Washington State, and Washington State was older than the Prince. No. When a Grand Lodge is established, that is the year in which the seniority begins. That's when the time starts, not when the parent Grand Lodge chartered the lodge, per se. You have to look at the actual year that the Grand Lodge started. So I think that that's another conversation to be had in the guise of this. Why do we need it now? Why not? Part of Freemasonry is the ability to travel and visit other Masonic lodges. You're extended the right, but it does not have to be given to you to be able to visit, to go to a lodge. So I think that's what we need to actually look at and see, that even though we are regular Grand Lodges, and the remainder that are not in amity with their quote unquote mainstream counterparts, they are still regular Grand Lodges. Mm-hmm. But in order for some of us who travel, me, what I call home is Birmingham, and going back home to Muncie, Indiana, I still can't visit Delaware Lodge number 18 in the mainstream side, where my friends I went to high school with are Masons. But I can visit Widow Sons Lodge in Muncie because they're Prince Hall Grand Lodge. So that's why it's important, is to get over that last unneeded obstacle, in my opinion.
And I think, you know what, if I could get in a time machine and go back to the day where the word recognition was chosen to I guess be the label or be the term that's used to, when you're talking about two Grand Lodges coming together to, basically, I guess, recognize each other, using the word to define it. I would change that word. I think a lot of people get hung up on that word, like recognition, you know, because you hear all the time, like, why do we need someone else to recognize us? It's almost the same thing with some people that are outside the craft, how they get hung up on the title of worshipful master. And what that think, you know, what they think that entails or whatever. I would say that a lot of people inside the craft, they do the same thing around the word recognition.
Well, you know what, and you're absolutely right. And I'll be honest with you. Personally, I don't get up by it. I understand it, I guess, a little bit, but I just think it's semantics, and I understand it. And I think that there's an intimate there's an intimate connotation there when you talk race relations and whatnot and all these type of things. And to be honest with you, I think a lot of the excuses for why there hadn't been recognition and whatnot in the past were kind of propped up straw man arguments, and we kind of know that, you know, history research, you know. But I think it's important also to realize that we can't get hung up on or what have you to look at the bigger picture. Domestic people internationally, you know, like I said, a week ago this time I was in Nigeria, in Africa. I happened upon a Masonic lodge there. I didn't get the chance to for a meeting, but I did, you know, happen to see it, and I said, wow, you know, next time I'm here, I know where the lodge is. But if it wasn't for the fact that my Prince Hall Grand Lodge of DC, that I'm a dues paying member of, if we did not already have mutual recognition, I want to call it, with the party in that region, which we do, I would not be able to visit there, regardless of the fact that I'm black too, right? So it's not about, so to me, I understand in America we get hung up on this racial idea, but where I'm trying to get to see, I know everybody doesn't travel international all the time, although you should. But if you get the chance to go and do something out of your normal zone, why not do it? Why not take a trip to Canada or Mexico or, you know, Puerto Rico or wherever, you know, and be able to enjoy the rights and benefits of your Masonic membership. You know, I'm looking forward to the day when I sit in a lodge on an international level somewhere. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and Brother K, you said something really, really, you hit on something, and I honestly believe that we should get out of the term recognition. I think we should move away from that term of recognition, and I think the appropriate term that we should be lobbying for across the jurisdictions is more of a diplomatic type term of fraternal relations. We have fraternal relations with XYZ jurisdiction. There are no fraternal relations between the Grand Lodge of Georgia and the Stringer Grand Lodge of Georgia. I mean, Mississippi, the Stringer Grand Lodge of Mississippi, the Grand Lodge of Mississippi. Fraternal relations. That's and that's my opinion. That's the appropriate terminology we should be using, because recognition. I mean, if you know it's over there, you recognize it. The Grand Lodge of England, in its official statement, states that they recognize that there is a Grand Lodge of female Masons. They recognize it, but they are not in fraternal relations. They don't have fraternal relations with it. And I think that even though we consider it semantics, I think that we're going to use the appropriate terminology going forward. You know, if we went back, like you said, when they chose recognition, I think they should have put the appropriate terminology of saying that we have fraternal relations between more than one jurisdiction, and fraternal relations can be severed. You can't recognize somebody and then not recognize them, because once you recognize them, it's a done deal per se. But
yeah. All right, well, brother, before we move on to the next topic, Brother Jared Sothers posted the question that I find amazing, and I want to get your opinions on it. He said, would mutual recognition between different Grand Lodges help to bring progress to racial issues in the country?
That's a brilliant question. I think, honestly, I think that's a yes and no. I think it can be a little bit of both. In part because I say yes, because I think it's good, particularly in areas. I don't want to say too much in an urban area, but in suburbs and rural areas where you don't have a lot of people, but you see, you know, those small towns. That way, it creates a situation where some of the men and women, you know, if that happens in a given area, kind of know each other a little bit better, past this black, white, you know, Mexican stuff, the racial stuff, and we start getting to know them as people. You know, and I think one of the issues that we have in America is, as the old adage goes, the most segregated day in America is Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Spiritual lives, not just Masonry, but just elsewhere, Americans, I think, for the most part, we're very guarded. I mean, I'm going to tell a secret. It's not a Masonic secret, but it's a black people secret. And black people, please, I need y'all to just let this one look. Y'all ready? America does not understand the dynamic of black barbershops and hair salons. I know I'm breaking the rule, guys, but I gotta put it out.
All right, James, you go lose your place at the table.
I'm not no more, right? You know,
but you know what's funny? What you said that, James, that it was actually in the barbershops and the salons, literally, that Freemasons of African descent and our European Masonic brothers, either in the States or elsewhere, that's one of the places that they actually frequented each other.
Right.
Brother Velasquez out of Pennsylvania, who was actually one of the first Scottish Rite Masons out of Philadelphia, was born in Cuba. And he had one of the most highly visited, what we call, come on, James, what's the name of it?
Like a parlor?
Sartorial parlors. One of the most frequently visited sartorial parlors, which is considered what they consider one of the high-end barbershop and hairdresseries. And that's actually where a lot of those conversations started. But that also goes to the conversation of Pike and Thornton Jackson. It took place at a barbershop. But do I believe that the fraternal relations between Prince Hall and the mainstream Grand Lodges? I think yeah, because most of the times people are segregated. Their lodges typically look like what their friendships look like.
Right.
I mean, if you think about it, I mean, the people in your lodge are the people that are around you every day, or the people that know you directly. That's what they say. Well, you know, the individual is the best marketing for a lodge. The individual brother is, because that's how they get in. But you know, and I'll say this one caveat: more close friendships with people of color that are in mainstream Masons within the past couple years. And that's an oddity, I think, that's there as well. That relationship has actually grown with brothers that are in the mainstream lodges. And these are brothers that are both African American and brothers that are also in the Caribbean, but brothers that are also born that are Africans living in the States that have joined the mainstream lodges. Right. So it crosses international boundaries, even within what we consider the same quote unquote race, the people of African descent.
Absolutely. Yep. And that's why, you know, I'm in complete agreement with you on that note. The reason why I said yes and no, and here's why I say no. put is that I don't think, to be honest with you, I don't think Masonry at its core was ever really designed for the racial that we ended up having in the United States, but we have it, right? And so when you talk about mutual relations between Grand Lodges, creating a dynamic where it helps racial relations, yeah, I think it can to do that. I think that it could happen, but I also think that if a person, regardless if they are black or white or whatever, candy stripe, bigot before mutual recognition, I'm just of the opinion that they're going to be a bigot afterwards. If they don't like white people or black people beforehand, they're not going to like them after. My opinion. Now, I'm sure that there are cases where that is not the case, but I'm very clear. I think that there's the only thing I think we can do though is try and try to had people. Honestly, I think social media is a great avenue for this because I've had, I don't just post Masonic stuff on my social media. I post a lot of my personal thoughts or whatever, and I've had say to me, well, how can you feel this way about, say, for example, and then I have to tell them, I say, well, yeah, you may know me as a Mason or whatever, but you don't know that I've had to deal with police throwing me against the car and all types of stuff myself. And then when I say that to somebody, I've had a couple people who disregarded it, didn't believe me, or whatever. I had a couple of people who, on that very controversial topic, which we know has torn this country apart over the past, some people would say the past 2 or 3 years. I'm going to say the past couple decades, centuries even, that it humanized it for them when they knew a person that actually had experienced a negative interaction with police that was racially motivated or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's what I say again. It's a yes and no thing. It just depends on the people, and again, like I said earlier, if they're open-minded or not.
And let's be honest too. I mean, our meetings, as we all know, they're very we follow a script. So during degree work, during a regular meeting, we have an agenda, we follow that. It's the repass or the meals before the meeting or after the meeting or the social hour when we sit down and, we don't talk Masonry 24/7 when we sit down to eat and break bread or whatever after or before a meeting. We talk about life. So in bringing two bodies together, and like you said, you get to know someone on another level. Right. I think as an organization, and this is my opinion, not the views and opinions of anyone that I may be a member of, but I don't think it's Masonry's role to be that unifier of the country. I think if we stick to our, again, proverbial script and teaching us how to be better men, and we can go about that by intermingling with other folks that may not look like us or have the same views, we're supposed to take from that relationship and then implement that in our regular lives. So I think that's where it can have some type of impact. Not when I have my suit on and my apron on and my gloves on, but when I'm out and about in the community. And I think that can start.
I really think that's something that's key. Grandmaster Hawkins, when we were talking about this, and he kept hammering this in on me as a conversation piece, and he said it to me, but then he also said it to our counterparts. And what he said is, Alabama football and Auburn is the most divisive thing in the state. Mm-hmm. But he said every Saturday you can have one of the most bigoted people of European descent sitting right next to one of the most bigoted men of African descent. And they will cheer Alabama and Auburn on at the same time. Mm-hmm. But they couldn't sit in the lodge together. Mm. So we can sit there and cheer on this football team for 60 minutes, but we can't sit in the lodge together for the same 60 minutes. Mm-hmm. So I think that, I think it works backwards. Yeah. We should be doing it backwards. What you do in your daily life in terms of race relations. You should be trying to bring your friends who may be of a different race and introduce them to the lodge. You know, not vice versa. I mean, don't get me wrong. You meet different people inside of the lodge, but why aren't you, you know, your friend of Hispanic descent that you eat a hamburger with, or you might smoke a cigar with? Why aren't you bringing him to one of your lodge events? You know, so that's what I say. What you're doing at home, it should feed vice versa.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. All right. Well, moving on, brothers. Brother Morgan, $250,000 in DC being donated. What's going on with that? And
well, you know, we make it rain. all $2. This represents the Morgan family fortune right here. $2 right here.
Like, we have props on the Prince Hall think tank as well. So thank you.
Right. Yeah. So, everybody, if for those of you who do not know, wait, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the chat room. Somebody, Rod Smith 1042 asked, "Where's Dave?" Dave's not here. You're stuck with us. Sorry, Rod. He's not here tonight. For those of y'all who don't know, the Most Worshipful Grand Lodge of DC and the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of DC have come together and joined forces. It's kind of like Voltron. Okay, you took the best of both worlds. Kind of like the album, but not with the R. Kelly stuff. Anyway, we took the best of both worlds and come together, and those two bodies have come together to form DC Masons, which is a nonprofit philanthropical arm that both Grand Lodges have representation on, that they are coming together to basically seek out philanthropic ventures that both Grand Lodges can contribute to as joint activities. The first thing that they did was they actually got us together as the two Grand Lodges, and we endowed a $250,000 scholarship fund at the University of the District of Columbia. This was very important because you the only public university in the district, and it is also an HBCU. A lot of people don't know that, but it is an HBCU. And our Prince Hall Grand Lodge happened to have gotten his MBA, if I'm not mistaken, or his master's, whatever his master's is from UDC. So I know this was particularly important to him. There were several hundred Masons of both persuasions there. I was among one of those people there, and it was an awesome time. I've also erected a plaque, or a monument, which I want to show you all very quickly. Let's see here. We're gonna go right here, and you guys, do you guys see that there?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'm sure you all can read it, but I'll read it for you. It says, "Dedicated to the Freemasons of the District of Columbia, and of their commitment to the light of public education and charity that guides the way to universal understanding all people. Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of DC, Lodge of DC as well." I've said it to both of them already on that day and beforehand. To Grandmaster Philip Hodge Witten had informed, I think, friendships with over the past few years of my Masonic. I'm going to put my Grand Lodge collar on for you. Just pride myself in being an idea guy things. And when I heard about this venture, I was really mad I didn't think of it. But I had nothing to do with it. I just was there. But I was really mad I didn't think of it. But I just say job well done. Brothers who were there with us, it was an awesome event. If you missed it, you surely missed out. Any questions?
That's incredible. Yeah, I mean, that just, again, goes to show you, I guess, again, I'm going to call it a perk of mutual recognition, but I guess when you do have that relationship, with just the relationship. It allows you to really think outside the box. And when you see yourself, I mean, you can be, I'm not going to say it's not a separate but equal thing. I'm not going down that road, but it just goes to show you that you can have two entities come together and represent, I guess the greater good of Freemasonry. That can benefit.
Right. And I think that it was a brilliant idea, in my opinion, because, at the end of the day, we all believe in charity and all these type of things. And so to see us come together as men in the community, if you're really going to be the Grand Lodge of DC and you're really the Prince Hall Grand Lodge of DC, then what are we doing that's so grand as Masons? And so to see us, I don't remember what the official numbers were, but I know it was a couple hundred brothers that were there, and sisters as well, for that matter. To see us all there united with our aprons on and stuff, to see our grandmasters talking about the importance of education at UDC as well was so important. The president of UDC, his last name happens to be Mason. So I thought that was kind of funny too. So it was like, you got the Mason, you got President Mason, there's Masons everywhere. Able to come together like that, it was nothing but friendship and fellowship. And I'll tell you, and I'm going to tell you on a personal note, as a person who has taken advantage of mutual recognition in terms of, I visit, fairly often, more often probably than most brothers in the jurisdiction, to our counterparts. A lot of the people who were there, I knew from both sides. I knew them, have relationships, friendships, but there were a lot of people there who it was really their first time the capacity doing anything. And you could see that, I don't want to say the hesitation, but you could see it was like, we don't know each other. But okay, no problem. Let's get to know each other. Who are you? Oh wow, you're the Grand Chaplain. I'm the Grand Chaplain. So you can see those type of relationships being formed. And and there's a picture that I took, and I wish I had the foresight to save it so I could show you all. But I took a picture where you see it's both of our Grand Masters, and then you have both of the Grand Marshals, and then you see both of the banners and lodges together. I'm happy I took the shot. It was such a beautiful image to see that. So I'm just honored to be able to say that I was there.
All right. Ken, news from the United Supreme Council.
Oh, well, we got some really exciting news from this past year's annual session. The United Supreme Council Southern Jurisdiction, we actually, the Sovereign Grand Commander signed a edict as well as the active membership at fraternal recognition / amity. And the Supreme Council for the Southern Jurisdiction, Prince Hall affiliated, has now extended recognition to the Supreme Councils of Canada, Haiti, Cuba, and Mexico. So all of the Supreme Councils and what we consider North America, we've extended, and it's as with a lot of the other recognition proposals to be done, is it needs to be reciprocated. Because, the funny thing about the Supreme Councils is all the Supreme Councils visit together just like the Grand Lodges, but they don't know that a lot of them don't know the Prince Hall Scottish Rite story. They just know about Prince Hall Lodges, but they have really no clue in regards to Scottish Rite Freemasonry dealing with the Supreme Councils. And one thing that we recognize as well, there's a small factoid. It was that the Supreme Council of Haiti at one point in time requested to merge with the Southern Jurisdiction, the United Supreme Council Southern Jurisdiction. And that will be coming out in the history book once it's okay to be written. So it's those little factoids, but I think that's something that's really great, that Sovereign Grand Commander Vaughn, as well as the active members of the Supreme Council, are looking at a down the road perspective instead of the old perspective of we're granting amity and recognition to them to include visitation, It just needs to be reciprocated from the contiguous Supreme Council. So, you know, again, it's a great step in the right direction.
So let me ask you this: do you, when you had said the in regards to they may not know the story of the United Supreme Council, are you finding yourself like as part of, you know, extending that? I said, do you find yourself? Is there a historical piece where you have to educate them or those other United Supreme Councils on the history of the Supreme Council so that they're aware of it? You know, is that part of your process that you're taking?
I think it goes hand in hand. It can ebb and flow. A lot of times, those Supreme Councils are at the Southern jurisdictions annual meeting, and they meet our representatives from both the Northern and Southern jurisdictions. And at times, from what I understand by having the conversations and just stories are told, that they're aware. But at the same time, the intricacies of the history are something that they aren't aware of. And I think that with more and more, and I think the social media outlets are the greatest conduit of information nowadays, because people are getting more and more information rapidly, more rapidly at a time, and in ways that they would never be able to see. Somebody posted something about a Supreme Council that they thought was dead. There was just a Supreme Council in title only. And when I talked to the gentleman about it, and once I talked to him about it, I went back and looked through my records. I had this information as well, but you overlook it.
Mm.
It's things that commonly happen, that unless we have some of these type outlets, that a lot of the history can get passed on rapidly. As a matter of fact, I had a chance to sit down with the Sovereign Grand Commander of Argentina when I visited the Southern jurisdictions, DC's fall reunion. And we talked about recognition, and he's, let me get you guys together. Oh, recognition? Hell, I'll get the conversation started with our Supreme Council, yours. And I had to give him our Secretary General's name and our Grand Chancellor's name. That's how that ball gets rolling. And I think that goes hand in hand with a lot of this stuff.
Okay. I look forward to hearing more about that, definitely. James.
Yes, sir.
You're forever writing, good brother. You writing something, you working on something new for the Flaxes?
Oh, man. Well, you know, it's funny that you mentioned that because I happen to have my Flaxes magazines right here. So if you're not in Flaxes, you should check it out. But recently I actually published this Masonic publication. It's called A Worthy Adversary: A History of the King Solomon Grand Lodge of Kansas, 1877. Now, I know what you're thinking. He said the King Solomon Grand Lodge of Kansas, not Kansas. I know. You're going, what is that? Well, basically, research, I actually kind of stumbled upon a kind of a forgotten Grand Lodge in Black Masonic history, and so I decided to write about its history. I found that written anything about it almost, and those who did really was writing the same stuff, and it was mostly wrong or incomplete. To find letters and all about, which was not the Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Kansas that we know and love today. What I consider to be a precursor that existed, it actually existed for a fairly long time, from 1867 to about 2005. I wrote their history up, and I think we talked about William Matthews on our compact episode back in the summer. But for those who are familiar with Captain William D. Matthews, I got into what his story was, and it was like nothing that I had ever seen before in the early history of a Prince of a Black Grand Lodge. The way I kind of marketed the story is that it's kind of it's Prince Hall Masonry in the Wild West. That you would think that means. And by everything, I mean everything. So get a chance, please check it out.
Outstanding. Well, I got a question for brother Caffey, since we got him back up on his horse.
Yes, all right, sir.
Brother Caffey, what's gonna be happening with the think tank, and what hold on. It's also election time for a lot of jurisdictions. Is there anything, any advice you want to give to some of the soon to be worshipful master elect and officers elect and appointees elect? I mean, appointees to be?
Yeah, I mean, well, you know, because seems like just yesterday I was nervous getting ready to ascend to the Oriental chair, serve the lodge. I think one piece of advice that I could give is just, take it seriously. Take your stewardship of the lodge seriously when you're a worshipful master or to head of any Masonic organization for that matter. Have a plan in place for each meeting and get to know your brothers. Get to know the brothers of your lodge. Understand that, for the most part, the majority of your members may not come out to your meetings, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't take the time to get to know them. So a simple phone call to members of your lodge, a letter introducing yourself with your contact information will really have something in place where you reach out to brothers. And please, please, please don't do it just when you have an event coming up to solicit, the purchase of tickets or, anything like that. Do it because you care, which you should. You should care about the brothers of your lodge. So definitely have a plan in place. Masonic education, is real big to all of us here on the think tank. So have something in place to educate your brothers on Masonry. And if you need any advice, please reach out to any of us. We've all been in the position that that you're about to get yourself into. Some of us is Brother Morgan. He served a couple years, so he can tell you a lot.
I've been waiting a long time. Thank you for that introduction. I've been waiting a long time to say this. If you want to come to me for advice about being worship master, the first thing I'm going to tell you is when I was in the East. No, I'm joking.
Yeah, but put something in place. Put something in place and be a past master told me a long time ago that you should want it. Your year should be where your members are proud to say that's my worshipful master. That's the master of my lodge, and you do that by putting the work in. I always say that if you do it right, being the worshipful is almost like having a second full-time job. If you do it right. But if you have a lot of time on your hands and you're in the East, you're not doing something right.
Right. Well, I'll tell you, for me, and I don't get a lot of free stuff. I should be charging y'all, but we'll give it to you. When I was master, my personal motto, I had a motto for the lodge, and I had a motto for myself. My personal motto for worship master, and I think that in general, was first man in, last man out. I ran my particular tenure as master, and I'm not talking about running the lodge. I'm talking about running myself. I didn't ask anybody to do anything that I hadn't done or would not have done or wouldn't be willing to do, or heck, in some cases, I wouldn't ask you something unless I knew I could do it if you wouldn't. I asked people to be somewhere 30 minutes early. That's because I'm there 45 minutes early. That's just, in general, I was the one. I mean, and this is not just telling you how I am as a person. I'm helping setting the lodge up and breaking down, even as worshipful master. I'm the one to turn lead. And that's one thing. Even though it was tiring, I will tell you that it was very tiring at the time. The benefit of that has not just in my lodge, but the thing, and this was the thing that I'll be honest with you, that really surprised me after I left the East last year. how many other brothers in other lodges who are now senior wardens and worshipful, or now some of them are becoming worshipful masters now because election month for us as well. How many of them would come to me and say, hey, I watched you and you inspired me, did certain things or whatever. And me, I'm not knowing. So you never know who you'll affect. But leader, be a leader, but don't be a boss.
Right. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's all about that, what they call that servant leadership, that we
Right.
often talk about. So, I'm sorry, I had a brain freeze right quick. I'm still getting used to being back, so forgive my lapse. But also, Ken talked about.
Brother Caffey, technically speaking, you're not back yet. We haven't voted you back on the island yet. You know that, right?
Okay, this is true.
We're waiting for Preston Collins' absentee ballot. So just
yeah, to come in. Okay. Ken talked about the rebranding of the think tank. So we're currently trying to, we're looking at what we are doing and what we've done, all the great work, as I mentioned earlier, in my thank yous, both online and at the beginning of the show tonight, to see where the show is at now compared to where it was at in my mind when I guess I first envisioned doing something like this. It's beyond my expectations personally. And it goes to show you, because my number one goal has always been, and I always tell this story, where I would have these various conversations with brothers about Freemasonry, and I would just be, in awe of their knowledge and their research and different things. And I said, we need to have some type of, we need to do something to showcase some brothers and to let the world know that Masonic research didn't die with the Honorable Joseph Walks, or, Brother Charles Wesley isn't the only person that wrote about something regarding Prince Hart Freemasonry. You have some heavy hitters out there that's doing some amazing work. So to that end, we're definitely looking into rebranding the think tank. Don't worry, the show isn't going, we're still going to do the show, but we're going to, one, with our logo will soon be changing. Currently working on that, and we hope to have that out soon, a brand new logo. We're going to retire our first logo, but then have the new one. And then also we're looking into other ventures as well that I'll let Ken talk about.
Well, in previous years we had talked about, and in previous episodes we had talked about a lot of the brothers. We talk about some of the books. We constantly reference different books. We talk about Prince Hall Life and Legacy. We talk about the Prince Hall Counselor. We talk about the Woodland pamphlet, the John G. Jones Scottish Rite pamphlet. What we're looking to do at the think tank is also open up the again, the branding is not only dealing with some of the online video components, but we're also going to be reprinting some of the old out of print documents to include books. And just as we used to look on our mother's bookshelf, and it would be three or four books, the Count of Monte Cristo, with it all in one book. What we're looking at doing is to start creating a what we're calling our Masonic lexicon, where we're having a bunch of these different reference materials all in the same book, but set it up as a series of volumes. So a lot of the information that we end up talking about, people say, well, I don't have that, I can get that. Now we're going to try to get this thing back in print for you. And one of the main things that we're looking at doing is an internal I guess it's an internal struggle of, do we correct the document, or do we just give it to you, period? That way you can see it, and then you can do the research on your own. So that's one of the big pieces that we're looking at doing within the next coming months, because all of us have different projects that we're working on. And this stuff is time consuming, and it not only excuse me, takes up time, but it costs money to be making copies of this stuff, to be ordering it, to go to different places, and but the main thing is the product that we end up putting out. We want it to be something that you can put on your bookshelf. If you want a paperback version, you'll get a paperback version. But if you want a hardback version to start, what we consider, we hope to have and move towards the Prince Hall think tank in terms of publications. It's going to be a high-end something that you can add into a Masonic collection, of Masonic books that you will end up keeping not only as yourself, but more of a Masonic heirloom. And this will include some of the books that will be coming up by Prince Hall authors, but will be passed through the think tank to serve as the publishing arm on that piece. But like I said, it's some new and exciting things. Brother Kafe's back. He's like I said, he's up on that horse, and we're about to slap the butt of that horse. That way he get to running. And Brother Black, God bless him, he's out in the field with a gas situation, and he's out there keeping some of our gas lines and oil fields safe. So Brother Black as well is working on a history book out there. I'm not going to give out the details until he says it, but he's working on a history book. I'm not going to get details about what exactly, but he's also working on some more of the reference materials as well. So we're heading in the right direction, everybody. And, like I say, just stay tuned, and hopefully we can give you something worthwhile to add to your Masonic collection.
Hey, Brother Collins, I want to say this for my good friend Curtis Black. I'm happy that you cleaned up that reference to him being in the field with gas issues. I just had to get that out because, I'm happy you cleaned that.
Oh, man. All right. And lastly, one other project that we were thinking about, and we talked about this a few years ago, actually, was, we're trying to, as much as possible, get as many historians together and for a symposium or a meeting where we sit down and discuss how we can better work together and how we can really look at our story, look at the Prince Hall story. Some great work has been, or research has been done, and some new things have been discovered. But if you go to some of our, within our respective jurisdictions, some of us are still telling different stories, because when it comes to Prince Hall Freemasonry and the history, there's some things, and Ken alluded to earlier, one of the reasons why we wanted to start republishing some of these books was to dispel some of those myths and rumors, and how we approach that. We definitely want to pay attention to how we approach it, not just telling the story, but how we approach it. So to that end, we were thinking about having some type of get together of historians where we can just get together and say, again, with our jurisdiction's blessings and our respective Grand Masters' blessings, this is our story. As research, here's the evidence to back up our story. And then you start to see and hear the unified story of Prince Hall, no matter what jurisdiction you're in, no matter what lodge you belong to. This is the accepted story amongst Prince Hall Freemasons. So that's that's a big logistical thing, trying to plan something like that to get together. So we'll definitely be working on that as well.
No, it's not a big logistical issue. I got a message here from Dave Gillarm. He said he'll pay for everybody to meet him down at Disney World. I got it right here. I'll show it to y'all later. Dave sent it. Trust me.
There it is.
Everybody. We're gonna meet David Disney World. He got just throw it in the bag. He got you covered.
All right. So parting words, good brothers. Anything you want to part with? Any words of wisdom before we close out tonight's episode? We'll start out with Brother Ken.
Well, I would normally play the theme song to the Prince Hall Think Tank. But last night we suffered a horrible travesty. And I'm going to say good night to everyone. And again, thanks to everybody for all the support for the Prince Hall Think Tank. We really appreciate you guys. We cannot, and again, I can't say it enough. We cannot say thank you guys enough for both not only your support, but also your criticism, because both are worthwhile to our mission and our goal. And I can't say it enough that we're so proud to have you back, Brother Antonio. It's like that cousin was always there. What happened to cousin XYZ, and you pop right back in, and we're good to go. But like I said, glad for you to be back, and thank everybody for all your support.
Thank you. Brother James.
Well, yeah, I'm always honored and privileged to distinguished panel. I want to thank the viewers as always. I want to say personally thank you to a couple of you all who reached out to me. For those who don't know, I literally, like, when people say, why don't you go back to Africa? Well, I said, the heck with it. I went back to Africa. So I just got back from going back to Africa. So that was a nice trip. I had I'll tell you guys the story offline, but I had a real interesting story about taking pictures of lodges in Nigeria. But that was a great trip. Actually, today is my first day not being jet lagged. But I want to thank you all for your prayers for my safe travel and safe return. I'll see you guys next month, Brother Caffey. I'm happy to see you back here on the show. Like I said, we haven't voted you back in. We're waiting on Preston, on Brother Preston's response. Now I got a message from him too. He says that he wants to see the logo first, the rebranding, and then he'll. Trust me, I got all the messages on my phone.
You got it all there.
Just trust me. So we'll have to wait for the vote next month to see what's happening.
All right. Yeah.
But again, just thank you guys so much, and I'll see you all next month.
All right. Well, again, thank you all. Thank you to the good brothers for not only holding it down, but just again taking it to new levels. I'm deeply indebted. Happy to be back. Masonic education is a passion of mine, as many of you know, and I think I know that the things that we've done through the Prince Hall Think Tank and the things that we'll continue to do through the Prince Hall Think Tank will all be for the betterment of the craft as a whole. So again, thank you for tuning in to this month's episode of the Prince Hall Think Tank. See you all next month. Take care.
Good night, everybody.